Hey everybody, this is Silver Spook, also known as Christian Miller, and I'm super excited today to be talking to the one and only legendary cyberpunk master adventure games maker extraordinaire, James Dearden, maker of Technobabylon. You want to go ahead and introduce yourself? Better than that.
Yes, I'm James Dearden. I made Technobabylon, as was just said, but independent games developer. I wouldn't quite go as far as master of cyberpunk. I mean, head swelling here, but I just write what I like, and sometimes when ideas fall out of my head, they fit into a cyberpunk niche. So that's what I went for with that.
I should say first off, my first commercial game, right, Neophyte, of course, is the first game I played that was a AGS game, I think, was Primordia, which was big. But I mean, Technobabylon, I've been a huge cyberpunk fan basically for almost most of my life, and played that game. I was totally like floored. I thought of it, I was like, Deus Ex. As a point-and-click adventure game, Deus Ex is my number one favorite game of all time. And I played Technobabylon, and I was like, this is like an adventure version of like Deus Ex, which is a really big cyberpunk, story-heavy, super thick world-building, first-person shooter RPG hybrid, the first immersive sim as they've come to be known. And I was I wanted to make a game, adventure game after playing Technobabylon. I played Primordia. The art and everything in there inspired me because it's got a lot of science fictional elements that I like. But Technobabylon was another it was like the closer. Like Primordia was like, here, check out Adventure Game Studio, and Technobabylon was like the closer in the business deal, I suppose. Anyways, yeah. So I could go on for a long time about everything I love about Technobabylon. What's your favorite cyberpunk work of all time? Well, maybe what was the number one inspiration for Technobabylon?
It's kind of difficult to settle on one absolutely as an influence. You're right about Deus Ex, absolutely. I've been playing that since the 90s. I've got the cheats for it still burned into my brain. Spawn Mash Fish 500. Crashed the game with that one. And I think it was the last game I tried to install on my old Pentium 1. It worked, but it was sort of one frame every 2 minutes sort of thing. So that's when I finally had to bite the bullet and get a better computer. But yeah, Deus Ex absolutely influential in terms of games. And if I had a studio behind me, I would love to make something that more, if it was more than just me and an artist like Ben and audio people. If it's more people in that bigger team, I would love to make something more in the style of Deus Ex. Because when I was making Technobabylon the first time around, that is the little episodic things, it was kind of a practice venture, and I had been replaying Deus Ex again at that stage. Oddly enough, Invisible War is actually one of my favourite ones of the series. Really? As heretical as that is to say, in many ways. But
don't post that on the internet, man.
Oh no, definitely not. No. No. But it's my big secret, But no, anybody who's spoken to me about the development side of things, they'll know I like Invisible War. I like its style. I like its ideas. Yes, they went way too far in streamlining things, but they did quite a few things right in terms of narrative and Alex Denton in a way has a bit more character to him or her than even J.C. Denton, because J.C. Denton is much more of a blank cipher for a character. And personally, there are stories where that works as a vehicle for the player to play through, where it's more like about them trying to be themselves. And there are stories where the player is experiencing the story of a character, and that is what I was going for in Technobabylon, because you've obviously got Latha, Regis, and Lao as characters who are already defined. They are already people in this world, without the players driving them.
Right.
I think I've lost track of what I was thinking there. Yeah, so yeah, that's part of the way in which Deus Ex was very much influential on it, and also the amount of detail and thought put into all of the issues of plot. I mean, it's not just the story that's going on. There are always things happening off to the side, other mini stories, little things that you might not notice the first time around, and that is also something I wanted to make sure to include in a game, because that is what you can do with computer games. You know, if you watch a film, you're never going to get a different experience the second time you watch it. Games change every time you play it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that was one of the biggest things that I liked about Deus Ex was the choice. It's not necessarily a sandbox, but it does have it's like many paths to the top of the mountain kind of thing, and I think it's like several mountains. So you always end up at the same place at the end of the particular level, but there's like almost infinite. It can't be literally infinite, but almost. It feels like you can literally do it any way in so many different ways. I think like for my game there's not as much choice as I would have liked, but mostly came down to like the amount of time that I had to spend on Neofeud, and I didn't have time to like make multiple dialogue choices for a lot of things. I would have loved to do. Funny enough, I love Deus Ex so much, such a fangirl over Deus Ex, that I decided to make a total conversion of it. And I blew a year and a half of my life making a mod called Terminus Machina, and which that one I feel is kind of like, I don't know if you might have heard of that one, but it's the really red one.
Yes, I have. I played that one. Yes.
Oh, you have? Oh, great! Awesome. that makes that now you're making my head swell. But but yeah, it's like I think like that one. I feel like that one's kind of like that one has. I wanted to have even more options than Deus Ex, but unfortunately, basically, what came down to was the amount of time and effort and assets and just the amount of time it takes to make any amount of content with a 3D game, even with all of the engine fully built and the models fully fleshed out. All I had to do is like paint some new faces and then write some story and do some audio. The game engines, the combat collision, RPG system, all that stuff was finished, and so. But even with that, it was like too much work, and I was like, but one day, I mean, as you mentioned, like wanting to like one day do something, like Deus Ex, if you won a lottery or 3, and you've got infinite money, like Blade Runner level $200 million, and the Roger Deakins of gaming can come in there and be the do all the art and lighting in the game and make it stunning in every way, then definitely that would be my dream. Like, that's kind of my thing is like, if one day, if these little adventure point and click things, they're like what was it? What is humanity? It's a stepping stone to something greater. That was like one of the Deus Ex slogans. It's like point and click adventure games are the stepping stone to this great immersive first person RPG game that will one day be made. And I've been talking to some guys, and I mean, I don't want to say anything particular, but I've been talking to some folks, and there's a lot of people who are sad that Deus Ex and the franchise after Mankind Divided, Eidos is it's been announced that they're not going to be doing many more. It's kind of on hiatus right now, and so there's a lot of people who are like, we really want to have a game that's like Deus Ex 1 made, and like that does justice to it. And anyway, I don't know what's going to happen, but there's some people who are interested in making it, and I'm talking to some of them, and I feel like I don't want to say like who should make it, but I do think that it is. I want your opinion on this. Like, I feel like it's going to be difficult ever to get a game like that made from a major, really big studio because of all of the challenges of they're going to want to reach the widest demographic, and they're going to want to for the same reason why like big Hollywood movies tend to get watered down. I feel like it's going to be incredibly difficult to get it made by a big studio. So I feel like it's going to be some smaller indie, possibly single A indie style studio that will one day put out a Deus Ex, a game that is on par with the original. What do you think about that?
I absolutely agree with that. I think, but I think that what indies are capable of these days is far and away more impressive than what it used to be. I mean, as you know, even today, what people think of when they hear the word indie, they still think pixel art and an early '90s style, which is fair enough. I mean, you know, Technobabylon was done in that style. It's reminiscent of Beneath the Steel Sky, one of my favorite games. But for me, a lot of using that style is based around limitations. In fact, I think a lot of art is based around what you have and what you have available to use. Right. And in that circumstance, 320 by 200 and 256 colors is what I was able to use at the time, because I was not a very good artist. It's only when I got Ben Chandler on board, who was also my way into Wajitai, that it started to look any decent. But you know, there are independent indies who are much more skilled than I am when it comes to the design side of things, and I have no doubt that if things like that come from somewhere, it's probably going to be indie. After all, as you say, if I put it on my snob mode, then a lot of big scale developers are aiming for the lowest common denominator. Yeah. So, I mean, you know, from a business point of view, I can completely understand that. You will occasionally get the crazy outliers like David Cage and his games, Beyond Two Souls, the upcoming Detroit Become Human, which,
yeah.
I mean, I was watching the trailer for that, and I was thinking, you know, darn it, I had that idea for Technobabylon too, with some of the things in it. Oh well, but you know, these things happen. I'll have to think of something else. There's no limit on imagination.
Yeah. Between all these science fiction, well, there's so many. One good thing I'll say is that seems like the heyday or the return of the golden age. Well, I shouldn't say golden age, because you say that and then that means it's over. But it seems like the return of cyberpunk is I feel like the mainstream, the studios, the big studios, were banking like Disney, the giant Death Star that is Disney, that consumes all content on the planet, was like eating up all of the not eating up, but it's got all of Marvel's IP, and then you've got DC, and you know, there's just so many so many comic book superhero things coming out there, and they had like, you know, planned out till 2030, and I'm sure they still are going to make a ton of these Marvel and DC superhero movies. But it was just like so many, and one after the other, like, you know, and you know, like recently, like there's been several like not so, you know, shows and movies that have not done so. I'm not going to name any names, but you know, like there's just been this. I feel like there's a little bit of burnout on the superhero end, and now it's like Ghost in the Shell, Ridley Scott's back, Blade Runner 2049. What's this? Ready Player One is being made. American Gods. Snow Crash is being made, right? So, I mean, on the one hand, it's like this is like it's like the big studios got fed up with Marvel, with the superhero stuff, and now it's time for cyberpunk, because that's the other thing that all the Gen Xers who are all 50 years old and in charge of everything now are hot on, right? Like, so let's do that. I feel like, if you look at the visual style of a lot of shows, and we just recently watched American Gods. The whole intro looks like Johnny Mnemonic to me. It's like, the color scheme, like the primary colors, the red, yellow, I'm not going to say that American Gods is cyberpunk, but the look of it, and it's not even a cyberpunk work necessarily. I'm a big fan of Nick Gaiman, and so is Mr. Silverspook. But that and the Stranger Things, like this, the tone of things is moving back towards cyberpunk, and it's like now with Blade Runner 2049, and we'll save that for a little bit later. But I feel like it's going to start hitting, and there's going to be more of it coming out, which I'm kind of like of two minds about that because for the same reason again, like if big studios just do what happened to rock and roll, like hey, a lot of kids are listening to this, let's like sell some T-shirts and Pepsi and with this music, like let's sell some cyberpunk T-shirts and like take the style and let's take the pink mohawks and the mirror shades and sell some of that stuff for $10.99. Then it could be not so good, but I feel like but I mean the good thing is at least there would be more people looking at it who weren't looking at it before, so that makes me excited. Since we're touching cyberpunk and movies, why don't we let's just open up the elephant in the room. Blade Runner 2049, James Dearden, creator of Technobabylon, ultimate cyberpunk adventure game master of the universe. What do you think?
It's gorgeous, absolutely beautiful. It's the kind of movie that really ought to see on a big screen at least once. It's stunning, and I was thinking several times through the movie, this would make a good series rather than a movie. It's long enough as well.
Oh yes.
But also in a way, I was kind of thinking it would have done fine without Harrison Ford in it at all.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean his involvement in it. They're obviously selling it a lot more because he's a big name, but I think they could have just as easily done the movie without him in a lot of ways, if they had to. But apparently, he was one of the first to get on board with it, along with Ridley Scott. But they made that's not to say the movie's bad at all. It's a great movie, absolutely lovely. I don't know what I can say without being a spoiler.
Oh yeah, shoots! I should really watch that. Yeah, I should just cut. I should just do like the podcast, spoiler version. No, we won't do that. But yeah, I mean, definitely.
It's definitely a film set in the future. It's definitely got Ryan Gosling in it, and there's a Harrison Ford somewhere. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, it's really hard. Like the plot of the movie itself is basically a spoiler. You can't even like read the synopsis of it. The synopsis, yeah, it should just be like Ryan Gosling's face and Harrison Ford's face, and that's pretty much all you need to know. The less you know, the better. Well, first off, I mean, I've already said on the internet what I wanted to say about it in more than one place, and I'll keep saying that so that people buy 75 tickets per person. Everybody stop listening to this podcast. Go buy tickets for Blade Runner 2049 right now so that it can beat freaking My Little Pony or whatever it's competing against. So that we get more of this kind of stuff made. And anyway, when you finish watching that movie and come back and turn on the podcast on the drive home or train home, I was totally floored by this movie. I was like, to be honest, I was like binge watching Ryan Gosling, Harrison Ford interviews like the last week. Because they're actually hilarious, and I would actually pay money just to watch them keep talking to each other. Where they basically do the song and dance, where they pretend not to. They're pretending not to talk about the movie, or they try not to talk about the movie by just cracking jokes at each other the whole time. So one thing I did like was the chemistry there in the movie that kind of showed. Although yeah, Harrison Ford just kind of dropped in at the last moment. He comes in, I don't say it wasn't an afterthought, but it wasn't necessary. But I can see how, like, maybe as I understand it, like the filmmakers were not that confident. Denis Villeneuve, the director, Ryan Gosling, and everyone else. They said like they weren't that confident about making the movie until Harrison Ford stepped on the set, and they're like, okay, now it's now it's Blade Runner, And then Harrison Ford punched Ryan Gosling in the face, and it was really Blade Runner, It's like. I don't know if you heard about that story, but yeah, it was. So visually stunning. I really felt like it. This is one thing that amazed me. It's like I posted on Twitter. I think I said like this is like a unicorn dream. What I meant by that, not just to like show my Blade Runner cred by referencing the unicorn story from the first one, but what I meant by that was that this should not exist by all measures. Like this. A $200 million movie in 2017 should be a piece of watered down stuff. I'm not gonna curse on the internet right now. But it wasn't. It was like it had like an art house sensibility. This was like I'm not gonna say Ingmar Bergman, but this is like what I watched in college. in my film classes kind of movie, but with a $200 million budget with Harrison Ford, and it's a Blade Runner sequel, and I was just like, the fact that it wasn't just, you know, Transformers, I was like, I couldn't even, like, I just had trouble figuring it out. Anyways, I could go a long time about Blade Runner 2049. What did you think? What did you think about? What did you think about? Or I don't know. What do you think? Do you think that they should make a sequel, or do you think they should call it quits? What do you think?
I was just thinking before they announced when they did announce 2049, I was sort of thinking that the first movie, wrapped quite nicely. You know, it didn't need a sequel, and I was concerned about where could they go with it for that. Have you ever played the Westwood adventure game of Blade Runner?
I have. I don't. Unfortunately, I'm kind of embarrassed to say that I think I haven't finished it because I had some problems running it at the time. But yeah, I have played it. Oh
yeah, it runs awkwardly on anything past Vista, but it's a great game, and one of the things I've been inspired by in terms of development. And yeah, if somebody had flagged me down and told me to make a sequel to Blade Runner, I probably would have gone for something like that. You know, similar time and setting, kind of sidequel kind of thing. But they did a good job of putting it further into the future. You know, it's covered the change of style and artistic situation in new Los Angeles very nicely. But they've managed to keep a lot of what made Blade Runner visually unique, while still modernizing it a bit for the 20-teens audience. So yes, of the things I think needed a sequel, Blade Runner wasn't one of them, but they've certainly done a great job of it anyway.
Yeah, fair enough. I was like kind of terrified. I mean, to be honest, and I think even the director has said, like, he said, like, you know, we have the chance, you know, we're like driving into a brick wall, and there's a keyhole in the wall, and maybe our car will fit through the keyhole and we'll come out the other side. But that's the chances we have of making that's the chances of success, is driving. You know, it's like it's basically next to impossible. And he said, I just accepted that, and we all accepted that, and from there, it's like, now you can just, you know, relax and make a movie and accept that, you know, just say we're gonna fail. Just accept that that's probably gonna happen, and then make a good movie. So I was accepting that. I was like going in the theater. I was like, oh my god, this is gonna be like, I don't know. This is like this is gonna be like the Star Wars remakes, or it's gonna be like I don't want to insult anybody's franchises, but you know, it's gonna be like when they take a great thing and they remake it, and it's big and expensive, and the money doesn't go where the money should. But this one, I was like, the 200, you know, whatever the multi-hundred million cost went to all the right places, which is why I'm like, I might have to take back that, like, Deus Ex could never be made by a big studio, but it's got to be like directed by Denis, or you know, because that's why I say it's miraculous, is because like a lot of times this happens, and then, you know, it's overhyped, it's going to be so great, and then you're like, oh, you show up in the theater and it's like, oh my god, like, this is not what I was expecting. But with Blade Runner 2049, it is it does the original justice, which is like, that is some kind of, you know, that is some kind of godly feat to do that, and it's its own thing, which is just so many. There's so many things right. This is it's like a pinch myself kind of moment watching it, for me anyway.
Important question.
Yeah.
Do you think Deckard's a replicant? I mean, this is the first film that's been out for 35 years now, so I think we can go ahead without spoilers on that one.
Do I think Deckard is a replicant? Let's see. Do I want Harrison Ford to voice act Neophyte 2, or do I want to be in a Ridley Scott movie in the future? Let me think about that. Let me think. Who am I going to piss off more? I will say that you know what? Actually, I'm not going to. This is not a cop out. I honestly like the question. I like it left open.
They did a really good job of leaving it open in the sequel as well. You know, I'm glad that they didn't nail down an answer there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That was again, another thing they got right. You know, it's like people were like, "Oh, they're gonna answer it. They're gonna answer it once and for all. Is Deckard a replicant or not?" And you know, I mean, personally, I like it. I can see the, you know, as you know, Harrison was like, you know, I really think that he is, because then I'm the one human that people can really connect to. And really, it's like, no, he's not. He's a, you know, Deckard's a replicant because of reasons, and I can see both sides of it, and I like that they didn't answer it, because you know, it's like Blade Runner is such a like a meditative. It's like an existential, meditative. What is the meaning? It's a movie that doesn't tell you what its message. It doesn't tell you like what to think, which is like a great thing. And you know, that's kind of the core of it, is like, what is human? And if the movie was to answer it, it's, you know, it would almost be like, you know, it would be like killing the mystery. It would be like killing the power core of Blade Runner to just say this is what it is, because then people aren't left to leave the theater and talk about it and discuss it. Like, why do you think, what is human, right? And like, why? Well, you know, I don't want to say any specifics, but like, you know, this character had so many human qualities, and this, you know, this one has, you know, the emotions, the love, the caring, the trust. You know, this one, you know, this character had memories, and look how they were used, and that's what makes you human, is the memories and your life history. That's human. And so, like, those kind of questions. And if they just said, well, the answer is this character is a replicant, the end. Everybody leaves the theater, and it's like, well, that's obvious. Now we all know the answer, you know. But the fact that it's left open ended is kind of the magic, I think, you know. For me, anyway, I think that's what it is. But we'll have to see. Blade Runner 3, maybe they're going to answer it, and I'll be proven wrong.
Give it another 30 years for the next sequel.
Yeah, exactly. We'd have to cryogenically freeze Han Solo for the next 3. He's going to be 120 years old, or 100 years old. If they want to bring Harrison back again. But, yeah, anyways, I think we could go on for a long time about that. But I wanted to ask you a few other questions. How has your experience been working in Unity? Because I understand you're using a Unity, correct, for your latest work?
Yes, indeed. I've moved on to Unity from AGS, and I'm using a module for Unity called Adventure Game Creator, which, if you've used AGS, it translates a lot of systems similar to the way AGS does things into Unity. So it's really good for streamlining the learning process and getting started on Unity. I mean, it's been a couple of years of learning. I have a lot of started projects that have kind of been practice exercises, but I think I'm finally at the stage where I can make things that work as well as I did when I made them in AGS. But now I can also build them in 3D, 2.5D. Although the issue I've got now is I can make them like that, I'm just not a good artist. You know, they work, they just look terrible. And it's kind of problematic when you're building things and it's all grey placeholders, and it's sort of, this isn't feeling right. Because what I can build is 3D characters, that's fine. I can do really low resolution backgrounds, but the two things don't work very well together. Having proper characters of about a poly count of about 3,000, which is like Half-Life 2 sort of thing. Kind of detail level on characters, not necessarily quality, with backgrounds at 320 by 200. That just doesn't work.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, the stuff that I saw coming out, I thought it looked, good. The most recent, like the what do you call it? There's some mecha characters. There was generally speaking, it looked like, I've actually seen other adventure game creator games. I think one of them is called like Kapia. Have you heard of this game? Kapia. I don't know if you heard of it. It's actually like it's kind of obscure, but it's made with adventure creator. And in terms of like the 3D models and stuff, I thought it looked pretty good. I haven't seen a lot of the background art. Most of your huh?
It's all down to who you've got making it, which is a lot of the issue when it does come to indie games. Because some people go into it with lots of imagination but not much technical skill, and other side of it vice versa sometimes. But you kind of have to learn. You have to build up a balance between the two to make something that actually works nicely as a game in the end. Something to with the right kind of visuals to convey what you're trying to put across. And the disheartening thing sometimes is just when it's not looking like you picture it in your head, and that's the problem I have with it sometimes.
Oh, I see. Right, yeah, because so as I understand, like you made 3D backgrounds, 3D assets, and then for Technobabylon, and then Ben Chandler painted over them. Is that how that works?
That's right. Yes. So I mean, there are. I guess if I wanted to, I could rebuild Technobabylon 1 again at a higher resolution. I've got all the 3D assets for it still, but it's it was a good style for doing that, because one of the things I dislike about some styles of old adventure games is what's called one-point perspective. So if people listening haven't studied drawing, it's like everything, all the lines in a room converge on one point, like in the fairly in the center. And to me, you lose a lot of opportunity with that. So I like to use 3D in order to make more interestingly shaped scenes. And the result isn't necessarily very good if you just try to port that straight into a game, which is why Ben was brought on, because his art is absolutely beautiful. And when he put his work on top of the 3D stuff, he created really great looking scenes for it. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm a big fan of all of Ben's stuff. Yeah, he's yeah. It's definitely got its own, like, I would say, it's got its own look. He definitely, like, he likes his colors. Like each game has a particular, really specific, like, color set, and like Technobabylon's definitely got the blue. I mean, I like to say, like, like cyan, like everything in the future will be cyan and blue, because it's like the color represents technology and what do you call it, advancement, and it makes total sense for Technobabylon. It's got that really, I would say, super blue palette, and with
oh yes,
the human, huh?
Oh yes, blue was very much what we were going for with it.
Yeah,
cold technological blue.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And yeah, it really works. Where something like, say Shardlight is like green, orangey green, and then you've got what are the Primordia was not him, but Unavowed, of course, is the reds, right? He's kind of working his way around the color wheel. I feel like next one's gonna be purple, I'm gonna guess.
Or yellow. He hasn't done yellow yet.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah. Well, if it's purple, I'm sure you'll be happy, because that was the Invisible War is the purple one, so I'm sure.
Yeah. Ooh, yes. Ben liked Invisible War as well. I mean, I'm probably throwing him the deep end of saying that as well.
Oh no, you guys are going to be burned in the hellfires of the Deus Ex forum. Sorry, buddies.
But yes, it's yeah, that's a good point actually. Deus Ex 2, it kept consistent with the colours and themes for that kind of thing as well. I've been pulling, out of curiosity and teaching myself texturing, I've been pulling some of these old games to pieces for their assets to take a look at what made them tick. And it's amazing how few textures and models Deus Ex 2 actually used once you start digging through it. So many things repeated and so many things recycled and reused, and you get in there and you realise there are only about 4 different wall textures.
Oh wow, I did not realize that.
It's amazing how much they recycled, but with some creative lighting, you can get away with an awful lot.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, like, I since you know what, we'll all go to Deus Ex prison now, and I'll just say I was a big fan of Invisible War as well. So you won't be alone in the gallows. But yeah, it was like, what I liked about it. I mean, I would say it's simpler in terms of the interface. It's not as much of a PC master race, quote unquote. It's not like a PC specifically made for PC game. It's got a little bit of consoleization, which is fine. A little bit simpler, skill system not as complex. But the story, I mean, like, I felt like, what made this, I mean, the story part of it definitely, I feel like, lived up to the original. I mean, some people didn't like parts of it, blah, 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 but I definitely liked that aspect of it. I like the visuals. I like the so this is the one weak point of Deus Ex 1, right? Obviously, nowadays it's a big joke, right? It's like, I'm not gonna, I reinstalled Deus Ex, and then I couldn't, like, I was looking at this super dark, super pixely thing, and I couldn't play, or, super, what do you call it? It's the visuals basically don't live up to modern expectations, right? That's one complaint I've heard from a lot of people. I'm like, what are you doing? This is the greatest game of all time. Stop worrying about visual stuff, you freaking console
Philistine.
baby. Yeah, and just play it, right? And then they're like, no, I can't. Well, some people. I heard that from a few of my friends. They've like, and I'm like, you're not my friend anymore. Go to hell. Yeah, but yeah. So, but yeah. I mean, Deus Ex. What did you think of the most recent Deus Ex? Is the Human Revolution, Mankind Divided?
You can definitely see they've thrown a lot of money at it. It's very, very polished, very nicely done. But in a way, I think they're doing a lot less to camouflage the solutions to things. So, for example, as in adventure games, you have an obstacle you've got to get past to reach your goal. And in Deus Ex, there's always the choice of, you can fight your way through, you can sneak your way through, you can talk your way through, or you can bypass things and bribe your way through, kind of thing. But in Mankind Divided and Human Revolution, to an extent, they did a lot less in terms of camouflaging these things. And arguably, you kind of want to telegraph these to signpost them to the player to sort of show this is how you're supposed to. This is how you can get around things. But Mankind Divided kind of felt like they were making it a lot more obvious than the first Deus Ex was. And when you come across a solution organically without quite thinking in terms of video game solutions of it, then it feels a lot more rewarding. It feels more like you've thought of this outcome and you're overcoming obstacles in this world. But yeah, I'm not saying Mankind Divided wasn't nice. It was delightful, but it feels a lot more video gamey than Deus Ex did.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. That's definitely one thing you notice with Deus Ex was, like, I mean, I know that's a big thing, right? It's like freedom, like, freedom and choice and the ability to do, player agency is like a big thing, especially recently. And, that's one thing, like, I mean, that's one reason why I honestly have not played a lot of first person or big games, because the ones that, every time I do play them, I find that, there is some choice, but I feel like it doesn't quite do it in the same way that Deus Ex did, in that there is literally, I mean, like, yeah, maybe you could drive a car wherever you want to go, but with Deus Ex, it was like there was a problem to solve, and there were like like getting past the guard, getting into an installation, you could climb, you could talk, you could shoot, you could hack, and you can come up with creative combinations of these, like take the boxes and stack them up and then jump over them and then set this bomb to go off so that the guard runs towards it. And then I remember once what's his name, Warren Spector said he found one guy who solved something, like he solved the I think it was the Liberty Island level. He solved like 7 different problems, like the guards, the tripwires, the cameras. He destroyed like all of them he placed like 10 different objects strategically throughout this scene, and he fired one bullet and he disabled all of the obstacles to get to Gunther, I think, with one shot. And it took him, like he said, this took this guy like a week to figure it out. And that was just one puzzle in the game that a solution that Warren Spector had never, something that Warren Spector had never in his wildest dreams even thought of as a problem to solve, and this guy came up with a solution. That was the thing that, like, I feel like some of the things that you could do in Deus Ex, you feel like I might be the first person who's even thought of this. Like the devs might not even considered it. And yeah, I definitely feel like that's something. I feel like Mankind Divided is a little bit like, yeah, here's how you do it. This is the challenge. If you don't know how to do it, there's gonna be like a waypoint and a tutorial, and we'll dumb it down a little bit more until you figure it out. And that's definitely something that made the original special. And
all the vent shafts are going to glow to make sure you know where to go.
Yeah, it's much more like a theme park. Go here. Yeah. Yeah, but let's see what else. Okay, here's the question. What do you think of the existing indie game industry and the adventure game industry in particular, or one or the other? Yeah.
Well, people keep accusing the adventure games industry of dying out, but these days it's actually got more sales than ever. So I think it's proceeding along healthily as it can do at the moment. It's obviously, as you mentioned earlier, with regards to niches, adventure games are more of a niche than first-person shooters outright. But there are companies like Wajitai who are filling the niche for adventure games nicely. They are providing the kind of games people want because they understand what people want. Dave and Ben, they've had experience making these games for a few years now, and every game is a technological progression. So I think the games that indies make are going to get better and better. And with regards to adventures, I think there's going to be more and more creative possibilities for creative opportunities. It's part of me sort of reckons that indie games are kind of 20 years behind current technology. So a few years ago, I saw the adventure games were all at, the indie ones were at 320 by 200, and that's what we had in 1991. But now if we wind the clock back to 1997, what did we have? We're almost at Half-Life, the first Half-Life. Things like Deus Ex, System Shock, the kind of games that I think that indie games should be getting onto reflecting. But the other part of it is that it's not quite such a technological arms race as commercial games development was. People get into indie games whenever they like and with whatever skill set they have. So there's not going to be quite such a definite progression of it. A lot of it is based around how many people one has available to get on a project, and there's only so much you can do on your own. But I think we're, as you said earlier, I think we're probably going to be looking at an indie Deus Ex coming up at some stage. Maybe not literally, not literally the title Deus Ex, but something along those lines, done by an indie team, first-person cyberpunk kind of thing. Because the next big cyberpunk game I'm looking forward to is, in fact, Cyberpunk by CD Projekt Red, and they're taking forever to do it. I made and finished Technobabylon in the time between they announced it and 2 years ago. But it's going to be interesting to see what they do with it. I saw actually on the off chance I applied for a job with their office in Krakow that was building missions for Cyberpunk. So I put in my CV and I said, "Hey, I made Technobabylon. I made a cyberpunk adventure, and it's on Steam right now." Didn't hear back from them. So.
Oh man, well that's why they haven't finished it, because they don't have you. They would have been done last year. Oh my god, and it would have been better than the original. Well, the original is a tabletop, but if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, I mean, like I'm definitely looking forward to Cyberpunk 2077 if it ever gets done. I just heard some interesting news that a bunch of folks have just left it. Unfortunately, some of the higher profile developers recently left. So and they recently hired, and then they recently got rid of, not got rid of, but some folks have left it. So I don't know. It is kind of a big, again, I don't want to go into my soapbox again. I'm trying not to do that, but I feel like the bigger the project, and again, this is why Blade Runner is a unicorn and not just another horse. It is a miracle. I feel like it's going to be another 30 years till we get a project of that size that does something on the level of Blade Runner that gets all those things right. And I feel like Cyberpunk 2077, that's part of its problem is CD Projekt Red, when it started out, right, when it made the first Witchers and it was it was more the size of, let's say, Ion Storm, with that created Deus Ex, with Warren Spector, with John Romero at the helm, who just John Romero just was the Doom uber star, right? The rock star of video gaming in Austin, and he was like, "Here, you guys, I've got all this money." Warren Spector's like, "I really have this game I want to make." Did you know this? Warren Spector was in a Dungeons and Dragons group with Bruce Sterling. Did you know that? Yeah, Bruce Sterling was the DM. Bruce Sterling, the chairman of Cyberpunk, as William Gibson would say, was the game master, the dungeon master for Warren Spector's D&D group. So that's
small world.
Yeah, small world, right? And and so he was, he's always had this cyberpunk, again, Bruce Sterling is a cyberpunk science fiction writer, wrote a book with William Gibson, The Difference Engine, etc., for all the cyberpunk nerds in there. Anyway, so the point is that, like, he was waiting, right? He had this dream of this game that has, as Warren Spector said, like, it's gonna have. I wanted to have that again, like Bruce Sterling, he said, was a great DM. I mean, I don't know, some people don't like him because he's got an annoying voice, and he's but one thing that he definitely was good at was DMing. He said, I wanted the game Deus Ex to feel like a pen, like an RPG, like a tabletop RPG, in that you had this problem, right? And Bruce would throw these problems out, and everyone would have nearly infinite solution, these incredibly crazy creative solutions, and it felt like you were building. It felt like there was no visuals, of course, because you're talking this out, but it felt like you were literally approaching a real problem as if you were those characters, and it felt so immersive, more immersive than anything he'd ever experienced. And he said, "I want to do that in a first-person shooter game." And everybody said, "You're crazy, dude." And he had to make Ultima and all the other games. And then he made, John Romero was like, "Here's a bunch of money. Make anything that you want, Warren Spector and your team." And that was the miracle, right? I feel like that's what I feel like these things are kind of like unicorns. So, like, it just happened there. And then, and then that team was there. They assembled, and then, stuff happened. And then it wasn't there anymore. And, it's like, I feel like, I do think it's going to come. I don't want to say who's going to do it. I know there are folks already talking about making a game like Deus Ex. Some people are talking about making a continuation of Deus Ex itself and making like new campaigns not with the Deus Ex engine, but basically something akin, maybe a Unity version of it. And so I'm hopeful for it. Let me ask you a question more about the writing stuff, because I mean, this is one thing like I loved about Technobabylon was the world building. Super dense. I know it was even more dense I haven't played the original. I've only played the Wadjet. But what do you think? Like, I don't know, what is the thing that most not keeps you up at night, or what is the thing that you think about the most with regards to the future, cyberpunk science fiction wise? Like, what is your thing that you're thinking about right now?
Me personally, I like the concept of the kind of joining of the roles of biology and technology, because in a lot of cyberpunk you get it's all very machines, it's very 1980s, everything's chips and electronics and wires and everything. But seeing the way science is going, we're growing new nerve tissue in petri dishes, we're making computers out of nerve tissue. There are a lot of things that the organisms have been doing quite happily by themselves that we're discovering and thinking, oh, we can adapt this ourselves. I think there's going to be a lot more of a fusion of organic and mechanical, not necessarily in the sort of classical cyborg sense, just in a insidious way that it worms its way into our everyday life, like the internet has. We're not going to notice it; it's just going to come into being, and that's kind of why, if I'm being pretentious, I'd say Technobabylon is aiming for post-cyberpunk rather than just regular cyberpunk, because it's also about how things aren't all terrible in this situation. The classics of cyberpunk, the world is terrible. William Gibson, it's a horrible place to live. Nobody in their right mind would want to, unless they were extraordinarily rich. Technobabylon, the city is, there are lots of grungy, ghastly places, but even if you're completely jobless, the city will keep you alive, as long as you're not going to starve to death hooked up to the internet, that your own your own death by malnutrition is your choice. It's entirely. That's, I'm not completely pessimistic about things. Not completely, because to me that's unrealistic. It's not. There is never a situation where everything is bad. So there's always got to be something good, even in a what is technically supposed to be a dystopia.
Yeah, that's true. I think that's definitely something that it's easy to kind of miss that. I think well, with Neofeud is obviously a worse place. So I think all the Neofeud immigrants are gonna want to migrate to Technobabylon world if they had a choice. Get me out of here. Unless you're super incredibly wealthy, then it's maybe not too bad. But but definitely that's true. I think a term for that, like not having utopia or dystopia, I think is heterotopia. Somebody's thrown that around recently to me, and I thought that's a good word. It's got some aspects of a really great, a bright version of the future, and it's got some not so good aspects. I mean, there's been a lot of science fiction, going back to what is it? Jules Verne. What is it? Or George Orwell, 1984, Asimov. I mean, there's been a lot of science fiction over the past century and plus years, but we haven't arrived at a complete dystopia or utopia yet. So I would say the batting average for dystopias and utopias is right now it's like 0 out of it's really bad. It's like not that good. I mean, most of the time we end up in a world that's kind of partly not so good and partly kind of good, but not utopia. But we always end up at a heterotopia for the most part. Maybe a meteor will hit, or I don't know, Amazon and all the giant Google and Facebook will all create singularity, and they will turn out to be Skynet, and we'll all die or be imprisoned in something. But that hasn't happened yet, so I think it's definitely something. I think it is more interesting to think about those kind of like not fully dystopic or dystopian or utopian scenarios. I will say, I have a little bit more. I kind of just personally, I aim more for the not dystopian, but I have stories that tend to be from the perspective of people. I mean, one quote that people have quoted back to me now is cyberpunk. The cyberpunk dystopia is already here. It's just that civilization is very good at papering over the more dystopic parts, and I feel like my stories tend to be of the people who lived in the more dystopic parts, just because I mean, I don't want to say I lived in a dystopia, but people that I know and my experiences have been from the not so nice side of the utopia that is, Hawaii, where I'm from. You think of it as a very utopian, that's where you want to go have a honeymoon, that's not like where you dump your trash. That's where you go when you want to make babies in the future and you want to have a good margarita. And generally speaking, that's all a lot of our marketing, right? But so I've seen the utopian end of it, and I know people who I mean, it's a great place. It's really wonderful. But there's also this other side of it, so it is kind of heterotopic. And I say I like to explore those stories just because I don't know, maybe I'm just more of a I'm not pessimistic personally. I still think that future could be a great. I'm not like the world's gonna end, but I'm more of a cautionary. I think of it more of as a cautionary. This could happen. And it wouldn't be too good. That's what I think. Yeah, I don't know. Okay, here's a question for you. What will the world look like 5 years from now? How about that? What will be different?
Different.
Flying cars, yes or no?
Yes, but only in Dubai.
Okay. All right. So, here's another question: was Technobabylon did it have anything to do with Dubai? Did you take any inspiration from Dubai by any chance for Technobabylon?
Yes, actually, I did. A big part of the setting of Technobabylon, the city of Newton, is a new city. It's on the East African coast near Mombasa, and I was designing it kind of in the lines of sort of an African Dubai, free trade. It starts off as a free trade area, and eventually strikes out on its own when it doesn't like how its neighbouring parents have trying to influence it. But I love the way that have you ever been to any of the new cities like Dubai, Singapore, Abu Dhabi, things like that?
I haven't been there. I've seen, but I haven't been to any of those. No.
They're I mean, yes, they're almost all built off the backs of slave labor, but they're beautiful in the glittering glass and metal kind of sense, and absolutely phenomenal. And the kind of it sort of shows what you can do if you just start from scratch, because a lot of big cities, they are built on the ruin, on the foundations of older cities. London, yes, now they're throwing up a lot of new skyscrapers, but a lot of the buildings here are hundreds of years old. Some are thousands of years old. But if you put up, Dubai, they put up a city from nothing since the 1940s. It just went, in the 1940s it was a fishing village, and now it's a global commerce hub. And it's that's what they can do in the 20th century. Imagine what they'll be doing, throwing new cities up this century.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Or like in China, right? You have they build cities for fun, or they build cities because hey, we've got like 500 million people, nothing to do. Hey, go build a city, and then build another one, and build like 7 more until we run out of money or economy. But keep building cities because we don't have anything else for you to do. It's almost like they, it's definitely like you can put up an entire city bigger than New York even in short time periods, and that definitely is. I feel like that's something that if we talk about what's new, what's happening in the future, the ability to what do you call it? Go through like 1,000 years of social-cultural evolution, into you to go from like subsistence farming or even hunter-gathering, and then boom, you're like 2 years later, you're in 300 floor skyscrapers, walking around serving Starbucks, doing tech conferencing or Skyping or software engineering. That's something that definitely hasn't happened in human history, and creates a lot of interesting. That's one thing I like about Technobabylon was there's a lot of that, cultures from all over the world, people from everywhere, and this is just accepted. This is just what it is. Nobody like bats an eye like, oh, there's somebody from India, or there's somebody from, there's like someone from somewhere I've never met, and yet it's like that's totally normal, and you talk a little bit differently, but everybody does, So
as long as they're all talking English.
Yeah, you gotta talk English though. So the future is everybody's gonna talk English, and yeah, well, they already do talk English. Everybody talks English. I've been working with a lot of people from Poland, Estonia, and different places, and it's they definitely, it's like everybody. It's like English is like I think this one Laura from Chaos Nova. This is writing group that I work with. She likes to call it the it's like the Star Wars, not new Star Wars. It's like the intergalactic universal language. Except I think they actually wrote a story where everybody talks in some version of English, and if you don't talk in English, that's like. It's like an incredibly weird thing to not know English. Like everybody on the planet, I guess at this point, most people on the planet, anybody who works in business, right, has to kind of know something. Like in Dubai, in China, everywhere, you've got to know some English. It will be interesting to see like how it evolves from here.
Is English going to end up becoming more of its own thing internationally, rather than relying on its roots in English-speaking countries like the UK and the United States, Australia? The country at the moment with the biggest English, the most populous English-speaking country in the world at the moment is India.
Right. Yeah. How many people do they have there?
Just about 900 million, I believe, at the moment.
Right. Yeah.
So it's all right. It's probably not representative. I'm married to a Sri Lankan, so I've got more Sinhala words in the household at the moment. But I'm wondering how much is Hindi going to end up influencing the English on a global level in the next 100 years, or other bits and bobs, words picked up from other languages, because that's what English does. It goes around, French, they're determined to make sure it stays French. The government has a whole department for that kind of thing. Whereas English, it goes around beating up other languages and stealing their vocabulary.
It's a very colonial language, isn't it?
Exactly, but not necessarily in a bad way. It adapts. It's kind of like there's a stereotype about British expatriates when they go abroad. They go native. They pick up ways of doing things that the locals do. Like my brother, he moved to Rome a couple of years ago, and he's going native as well. He's loving it. But the English language kind of picks up things like that. So words like bungalow, we got that from Hindi. Shampoo, that's another Hindi word. We pick up so much from other languages already. I'm intrigued to see how much. I think one of the things that's going to alter this as well is the internet. Is that going to Is that going to help us evolve the language, or is that just going to throw its whole new confusions into the matter? One of the things I find interesting about it, one of the things I was looking into exploring in Technobabylon too, because in science fiction, traditionally, when you think of the future with the internet, the internet is a broad information space which has allowed people to get all the information they need wherever they want, whenever they want, making deceit impossible. Or, on the other hand, as I'm thinking, is it just a place would people go and seek out the truth, or would they go and find their echo chamber where they are by default correct, no matter what else actually true?
Yeah, I mean, this is one topic. I mean, I promise I will not scoop you in your science fiction, but I'm doing something. Well, I mean, it's relating to the present. I mean, as any Ursula K. Le Guin or William Gibson would say, all science fiction is about the present, and the game that I'm currently working on, Dismaton, does have. It's not about that, but it does have. I am thinking about that because that's what's happening right now, right? Is the internet, the fabled, does the global village and everybody being able to communicate and interact and experience things with each other, to each other, being globally connected, does that, through the internet, is that going to make people come closer together, more empathic, bridge things? Or, as you said, is this going to be, self-reinforcing tribalism and people isolating, people becoming more and more like themselves and more divided from each other because of, and like, this is one thing that I'm definitely thinking about this as I'm going into this baton is, the way in which, I mean, I don't want to name names and, but I mean, everybody knows Facebook, Google, all the biggest companies on the planet, which are the only thing holding up the stock market right now. Is, we got Google, Amazon, Facebook, Microsoft, Apple. These are the, they're gobbling up entire industries. They're not even really corporations anymore. They're like they're like mega. They're mega corporations, right? Amazon broke $1,000 stock. These things, they have entire, like, they're like small countries unto themselves within their user bases, right? With billions of over a billion users on various ones, and within them, right? What is their incentive, right? What is Facebook's culture, right? Facebook or Google or Amazon, what they want to do is they want to have people keep coming back to their site to keep more eyeballs inside of their little country or silo or whatever you want to call it, or the stack, as Bruce Sterling would say, and so that they can continue to market, sell products, charge you to connect with people that you want to connect to. Facebook says, "Hey Chris, Silver Spook Games, would you like to connect with people who like Blade Runner and cyberpunk, and they're between the ages of 20 and 40, and they're mostly from the UK and Germany because that's your target demographic. Would you like to connect with them? Well, if you would, it's $10 per 1,000 views, sir." Right? And it's like, so now, and that's their power, right? They have everyone's network, they have everyone together. If you want to connect with these people, you have to be in these silos. And their incentive is not to foster not necessarily to foster a happy, peaceful, prosperous civilization. Right? Their incentive is to keep people there. What keeps people there? Rage is they say outrage is one of the biggest human emotions that drives people to do things, right? And so I hate that damn post that somebody said on the internet I disagree with this, particular, person on the internet. I'm going to get on there. I've stayed up, for 24 hours to think of a post to say to somebody who said something wrong about Deus Ex, right? And so that kind of stuff, I feel like, unfortunately, this again, I'm not going to say it's going to be dystopia or utopia, but that kind of the drive to have people coming back, and the thing that brings people back, right? I don't want to say name names, but we have a U.S. president, right? A lot of that was people on the internet getting mad, one side of it getting mad at the other side, and the other side getting mad at, basically it was a culture war. And at Facebook, what is their incentive is not to say, no, let's actually be more civil and have polite discourse and let's talk through these issues. No, it's, I want you to keep coming back so I can sell you some sell you some water filters, or sell you some, magazines, or sell you some, $10 mirror shades, or send you some, it's, so anyway, long rant to say that I am worried about that stuff, and I don't know what the solution is, but it's interesting for science fiction to think about it. Yeah, anyways, I don't know, yeah, maybe we have to have, some people are saying that we should have a what do you call, not a government solution, but some kind of more, not open source or government, but the government, one possibility is that, an entity that doesn't have an incentive, such a negative incentive, be the arbiter of discourse, as opposed to, let's say, a mega corporation. I don't know what that looks like. Some people say like open, like Linux, like if everybody had their personal social media that was not run by a mega corporation, like a government. This sounds really stupid. A government issued social media account, or a Linux type thing where posts were not.
It would be China then.
yeah, that's probably not better. So I don't know. Maybe there's no solution. But it's an interesting thing to think about. But yeah, definitely. I don't know. What do you think about your country? What do you think about your country's social media? Or your government? Or I don't want to get you in trouble.
No, they're not going to. No, because the government aren't quite at the stage where they're screening what people are saying and sending the goon squad around to break down the doors yet. Give it a few months, but it's really difficult to. I'm at the stage where I don't want to discuss politics with anyone in this country, because people assume everyone assumes what they know is factually true, even if it's miles off. I mean, I literally studied politics at university. My degree at university was in politics. I really? Came out of it with the first, and yet now people are telling me that that maybe Donald Trump did have some good ideas. Where are you getting this from? The internet. So.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. Anyway, I mean. I guess it is kind of depressing to talk about. I don't want to go too deep into that, but I mean, yeah, that's what I would love to come to. You're in UK, correct?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. I've never actually been there. I mean, I've only been to Canada. I went there. I tried to marry William Gibson, and he was taken, so I took my wife instead. And that's a joke. I keep telling that joke, but that's the only place I've actually been. Well, no, I've been to Marshall. I've been to the Marshall Islands. That's in the Pacific. Haven't been to Japan, but I've been to Canada and east and west coast of the U.S. But I would love to get to the UK someday, and then to Dubai shortly after that, maybe. But
it's probably on the way over from Hawaii. It's so far away.
Yeah, we're literally the only place you could be further, I think, is maybe Germany. That's 12-hour difference. But well, I mean, to kind of get off the politics, one thing I like about and I was joking when I said, most of everybody who wants to buy a Neophyte is 20 to 40 from UK and Germany. But the truth is that, like, I don't want to say the way that your country has kept its literary culture alive, but the average, person that and this could be just because of the people that I interact with, who Facebook decides to deliver to me. But I mean, a lot of people, in the UK, it seems like there's still a strong literary culture going there. And, people in America, I mean, I try to sell these games in America, and they're like, what the hell? Where's my damn gun? I don't want to, that's a little stereotypical, but, it's either that or it's like, why isn't there more action? I mean, just generally speaking, the culture is much more, I'm gonna sound really snobby, but, it's not as literary a culture as the UK. And I don't know what I'm trying to say here.
I
But what do you think?
understand.
You understand what I'm saying? Okay, because I'm going to piss off so many people if I keep going. But what do you think it is that has kept that that alive in your country, or I don't know, what is it that's different?
In Germany, I think it's more. There's very much a culture of adventure games because there's a lot of shying away from and censorship of the more violent end of games. So narrative games have had a much stronger presence around there, and there's a surprisingly strong industry of them in Eastern Europe, Central Europe, and Germany for the creation of those kinds of games. But in the UK, we kind of have a history of it as well. But a lot of people grew up with computers like the Amstrad and the old Commodores here, and for them, their first games were text adventures on tape cassettes that pop onto your keyboard and it takes half an hour to load it. But the first game my mother remembers is playing The Hobbit, which was on the Commodore, I think. But that was a tape cassette text adventure, and a lot of people here, that's what they remember when they think of computer games. That's the first thing they think of. They remember those games from the oldie days, and then they moved on from that to the LucasArts adventures. And I mean, grab someone off the street, they probably won't have heard of Monkey Island, but there is enough of a culture of people having played these things when they were younger for it to have still stuck. As I recall, a lot of people who bought Technobabylon over 30s. They're over 30, and more than half are women. So it's an interesting demographic.
Oh yeah, hats off to you if you've got more than half women.
I don't know if that's more because I'm hijacking Roger Ty's audience generally, and that's the mark he's managed to establish already. But if I'm managing to appeal to that kind of target demographic, then a market's a market.
Well, if you like story, right? I mean, again, when I say like literary, I'm not necessarily talking about like necessarily like games that are like full of tons of text. Although adventure games do have, I would say, more text on average than other games, especially shooters. But it is a place where you can explore. I would say more complex stories. You can have more. You can do more with characters in let's say per man hour. The amount of story, character development, world building you can get out of adventure game is a lot way better ratio than, let's say, like any kind of shooter, first person shooter. I would argue even an RPG, because in RPG, this is one thing. I was actually thinking of doing Neophyte as an RPG, and then I was like, wait, but then I would have to make a skill system, a hit point system, a mana, and a magic, and all the animations, and then another thing was like, and now this is one thing, and I things like Planescape Torment, and there's a couple other games. Undertale is one I recently played, and they kind of explore this theme, which is one thing I had conflict with. Was in a lot of these games when there's fighting, it's up, it involves killing a lot of stuff and then taking those goblins or mooks or soldiers' stuff, guns, weapons, HP, health packs, and then killing more of them and then taking more of their stuff. And then basically, if you look at most shooting games, you're basically playing a homicidal maniac, megalomaniac who wants to rule the world. And and it's like when I was writing the script, I was like, because I actually wanted to have some fighting and more fighting and more like either platformer or RPG. And I was like, but it's hard to really justify a lot of the things. Like if you just killed 1,000 anythings and then somebody dies, it's kind of like, and we're supposed to feel sorry for the character's friend who just died, right? But it's like you just killed like 1,000 little goblins and things, and then now you want us to feel bad about it. I started to think about it a lot, and I was like, it doesn't like it makes the narrative ring a little bit hollow to me. And I was like, you know what, adventure game, because then it's not about killing. People die, right, in the game, but each death has a specific meaning in the storyline, and that's what I liked about point and click. Even though I know people will get bored, a lot of people who like shooters, and my friends are like, "What do you make it?" Some of my friends are like, "What are you making that for? That's boring." And I was like, "But it was story rich per man hour. I could make it with one person, and see the narrative, the problem of this is the problem I see. I mean, not everybody's gonna see it, and I like Deus Ex, but that was the thing, right? Deus Ex lets you choose. If you didn't want to, you actually could get through without killing anybody. So, anyways, I don't know what you think about that, but
it reminds me of thinking of not killing anybody. First time I played through Deus Ex, so there's the bit where you're escaping from Yunatco about a quarter of the way into the game. You bump into Mandley in his office. I tranquilized him, flung him over my shoulder, and carried him all the way with me to Hong Kong.
Does that work?
It does. Once you start, you have someone over your shoulder. It keeps them through the level transitions. I stuck him in Jock's apartment for most of Hong Kong. I think I lost him in Paris when there was a transition. You can't keep people for, because it's sort of you voluntarily sort of take a blackout and then wake up somewhere else. But I managed to keep Mandley with me the whole way until.
Oh my god! I had never heard of that. I see. This is another piece of the why Deus Ex is genius, because I had never even considered that. I've never heard, and I've watched a lot of Let's Plays, and I've played a lot of times. I never heard of that you could carry manually through that much of the game. That's crazy.
I mean, he never wakes up again, but it's funny because if you do kill Mandley, then the news reports show up saying that Mandley has disappeared mysteriously, implying that MJ12 are covering it up. But in this case, we picked him up and carried him off to Hong Kong with us. People wonder where Mandley's gone. It sort of fits in the scenario anyway. That's great. Yeah, but exactly. I mean, that's a good illustration. And then that's the first, when you play Deus Ex, that's the first thing, right? Is do you want to take it's like, do you want to take where most character creation things is like, do you want to be a rogue? Do you want to be a magician? Do you want to do you want to use rocket propelled grenade launchers or knives? And what do you want to do? How do you want to be a violent person, right? And Deus Ex do you want to shoot people or do you want a tranquilizer gun, right? Do you want, and each side has an argument, like, hey, these are terrorists, but, and there's that one scene early on, right, where it's like, if you're a stealth player, you sneak up on these two guys, and they're the terrorists, they're the evil terrorists, right, the NSF, right, and they're just standing there, and they're just having, and they're while you're sneaking up on them, you can eavesdrop on their conversation, and they're like, hey, yeah, so how's the wife and kids? Hey, what are you guys going to do when you're getting, they're just talking about what they're going to have for lunch and their families. And it's in that moment, right? That was a lot of people cite this as a unique experience in gaming. And another piece of the genius of Deus Ex is that it makes you question, if I kill these people, that's not maybe that's a horrible thing to do. Maybe I'm not the good guy, and that's a theme throughout the whole game, I would say, right? And that's one big piece of what I liked about Deus Ex was that choice. And then you could just shoot them in the head. You could shoot them all in the head if you want. You could blow them all up with RPG, or you could trank them, or you could tase them, and that's anyway. Yeah, so that's one thing I really liked. Another thing of a long list of things that I really liked about it. How about this? So your next game, I don't know if we got clear. So do you have a release date for any of the future Technobabylon games? I've got 3 different projects on the go. One of which is just a voice demo for a website that'll probably be a couple of months. For a chap called Alex Brody, a Canadian voice actor. I released something with the Unity Adventure Creator a few months ago. Put it up on Game Jolt.
Right. It's the Stalag Zero. Is that? I don't know if I'm saying that.
That's the one. Yeah, Stalag Zero. That was pretty much the first thing I'd completed with the Unity Adventure Creator. So it was kind of an endeavour to make sure I'd got the hang of 3D, and I think it works. Yeah, as for what I'm working on at the moment, I keep having panic moments where I'm not happy how it's coming out. But a lot of that is, I think, that it looks like grey placeholders, because as I say, I'm not a great artist.
Oh no, well, I mean, to be honest, like, I did think that the stuff that was coming out, I was like, if you had a game that had, like, those characters in it, I would play it, I would buy it. So take that as a good data point.
Well, then there's the space one, the one with the more colourful characters.
Okay.
That's the one I've been doing more of recently. But I like the way that one looks, but apparently it's less marketable. So I can make that and not be able to sell it, or I can make Technobabylon 2 and not be happy with how it looks. So.
Oh man, that's a rock and a hard place. Ouch. Yeah, I mean, like, Technobabylon 2. Yeah, I'm definitely. Well, I mean, you could make a text adventure, for the Commodore 64, and I think I would get Technobabylon 2. So, and I think a lot of people would too. So, I mean, it's truly, I mean, the visuals were incredible, and Ben did an amazing job. But the story was the number one thing for me, I think, and I'm not gonna, again, I'm a big cyberpunk fan. I don't know how big my particular, I don't know what my demographic size looks like, people that are similar to me, but and I think in the adventure game world, there are a lot of people who are into that kind of stuff. And I do think that, there's space for it. I do think the fact that Blade Runner 2049, I think, is going to blow the bejesus out of everything, is going to increase the audience for that kind of thing. And I mean, and in a good way, in the sense that it's, it's thoughtful. It brings up those questions. I mean, I'm happy about it, because this means that more people will probably be looking for cyberpunk games, and Neophyte is a cyberpunk game. So full disclosure, there's a little bit of self-interest there. But yeah, I mean, I definitely think that, the story. Let me ask you this: how, I know you got spoilers, but have you finished the Technobabylon 2, or got a story there, or is it it's kind of still?
The story is there. The game is about 1/7 complete. As in playable. It's broken down into 7 chapters, each 3 sections of their own, and 6 of those sections. Sorry, 3 of those sections are playable already. So 3 out of 21 are playable from start to finish. So there's the start of a game there, and at the moment the style looks like. Well, the style that's aimed for is the old PlayStation things with the 2.5D backgrounds, like Resident Evil or Martian Gothic, those sorts of games with the 3D characters. Because I think it's a good way. It's a good way of mixing. There's the potential for mixing 3D characters, which I can do, and 2D backgrounds, which I can outsource.
Right. Yeah, that actually sounds like a really good plan. I mean, I'm a big fan of Resident Evil. I know what you're talking about, though, where you have frozen, still backgrounds and character running around through them. I do think that does sound like the best of both worlds to me, because I paint all my stuff, and if I had to make like fully moving backgrounds and complex parallax and anything like that, like, yeah, I would have an incredibly hard time with it. And I do like that thing of, like, the adventure game background. I do like, it's a little bit, more static, that generally speaking, AGS and adventure game backgrounds, are just kind of like, an image, and maybe it pans a little bit to left and right, but basically you're looking at one image, one background per room, maybe has some animations, but that allows you to, like, I think that's what that allows, like, Ben Chandler, for example, to put in all this incredible detail and make it like I think of, like paintings, almost, in a sense, like each one is like its own unique painting, as opposed to just like some more, that makes it, for me, I study a little bit of film. I'm a kind of a film buff kind of guy, narrative heavy kind of guy. That's why I love Blade Runner. And is that you can really frame the shots. It's much more. It has a cinematic quality to it when you have that. And the same thing for this kind of 2.5D, where you have still, a shot like the balcony, the mansion, the inside, et cetera, and you can really, because I mean, for me, like, a lot of the things is, I mean, this is one thing that I think that makes, again, I'm gonna keep going back to Blade Runner, but the story, part of the story, the background is like half of the story, in a sense, like, it communicates it communicates through the way the light is coming in, like the searchlights coming in through windows, and for example, Blade Runner gives it a sense of tension. The incredible wealth and power is communicated through like the symbolism of the Tyrell building, for example. And so a lot of you don't need a lot of dialogue. You don't need a lot of stuff to say because it's all said in the world, and a lot of that happens because of the way the shots in the movies, the shots are set up. In games like in Technobabylon, like the way each background is drawn, I feel like it can communicate a lot of things that would take pictures worth 1,000 words. So then that takes it offloads a lot of the work that you'd have to do in talking about this is the future. We have some flying cars. This is a jetpack. This is that. It's just like it communicates a lot of that. Anyway, so I think that I'm really interested to see what that would look like. It sounds this Technobabylon 2 sounds like it's gonna be I don't know. I'm really excited about it already. So yeah. I hope that it's less frustrating for you going forward. Let's put it that way, so that you can get it done.
Thank you.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, let's see, what time is it now? I don't know. Yeah. Anything else you wanted to talk about, say, etc.?
Well, I'm interested. You mentioned when you were getting started. What started you off on Near Feud?
What started Near Feud?
Because Technobabylon, it started off essentially. It was a practice, a 2-week-long practice project to get the hang of AGS, and it kind of snowballed from there. What got you started with Near Feud?
Yeah, with Near Feud, let's see. Well, as I said, it's one really weird thing. Like we're on opposite sides of the planet, but I was reading a little bit about you, and we have some similar history in the sense that I started actually Half-Life modding, which I understand you also did. I did look into some Doom. I never actually did a Doom mod, but I worked on in high school. I worked on like Half-Life mod teams. None of them really got big or were released. Like one of them was like a Star Wars mod. One of them was like a Aliens-y type of thing. And then I got into Unreal Tournament, Unreal Tournament 2K4. In college, I did an Unreal 2K4 mod for a class, a total conversion. And then Deus Ex. I actually worked for some smaller companies, like they're like little, like when I first started, basically, I started working for like a mobile phone game company. Here's a fun tidbit. When Silicon Valley and West Coast American tech billionaires get a midlife crisis, instead of buying a Porsche, they all move to Hawaii and they start a game company and have pizza with college kids. And I was one of those college kids, basically. I've worked for I've literally worked for 3 different Silicon Valley. Well, one of them was an ex Microsoft VP. One of them was the biggest indie game publisher in San Francisco, or on the planet, but he's from San Francisco. Retired. They all retired at 37. They moved to Hawaii. Mark Zuckerberg is still trying to buy half of Kauai, but there's a big protest. And Larry Ellison owns all of one of our islands. But anyways, the point is that I was working for one of these startups, and it was I was a programmer. I was doing some audio and programming, and for this company, and it was fun. We're like basically staying up all night playing like Lord of the Rings and Counter-Strike LAN parties, and working on games between that. But the games we were making, because this guy was ex-Microsoft, so we had contracts to make the amazingly creative, mind-blowing thing called Solitaire version 10.0 for Microsoft Windows. How fun is that, right? Like, the biggest creative question was, which side of the head should we put Suicide Jack's knife into? Should we put it on the left or the right? What do you think? That was the biggest question we could ask, right? Because it's solitaire, right? What are you gonna do to it? There's nothing, right? And it's Microsoft Solitaire at that. So, and there's a few other things we worked on. It was like mobile games, but it was basically like, and I was a cog in a bigger team, and it was fun. But it was like, what? I want to do something more than just, work. Be this little piece. I have other creative ideas I want to explore. I was into writing at the time. I wasn't an English major, but I think I might have got the amount of classes I took in it, I would have got a minor. So I was really into that, and I was like, I want to explore something, and I started working. I'm actually from like the I'm from Hawaii, but I'm from like the not so rich part of Hawaii, and I was working for a nonprofit, basically teaching kids. Shortly thereafter, I stopped that, and I was teaching kids about. I was teaching STEM classes, basically science, tech, engineering, math, robotics. I taught some game programming. They're like basically it was like the inner city side of Honolulu, the city I'm from. They had there's basically there's a lot of kids. It's kind of like keep kids out of trouble, like the Boys and Girls Club, but with robotics and programming and game design. So I was teaching that. And
sometimes it comes up a little different image when you think use robots to keep kids out of trouble.
That's right. Yeah, not like the Ed 209s in Detroit. Kids, stay out of trouble. You have 10 seconds to comply. No, not like that. But yeah, it was Lego robotics, Lego and Vex. Lego has these Mindstorms robots. I might be familiar. Yeah, so it was basically they were actual robotics competitions where kids build their own. Design their robots. They design like the programming, the shapes, and then they have these challenges like get the robot to save the little Lego man from the earthquake, or each year there's a different theme like figure out a way to make an agricultural robot. I don't know, or like rescue people from the Fukushima plant, the little Lego Fukushima plant with your robot. So it's like it's like the DARPA challenge but for kids. So it's about. And it's kind of like I think of it as like it's like football or basketball or soccer stadium sports, but for nerds. So everybody's in there, and the parents are there. There's techno music. It's it's happening. There's food and drinks. Everybody's watching around this two teams where they're like but instead of like playing basketball and or slamming into each other, their robots are competing against these intellectual challenges. So it's really cool. It was a good way to get kids to think about STEM topics. And these were kids in the city who they didn't have a lot of opportunities. A lot of them were immigrants. A lot of them were people. Well, a lot of Hawaii, it's different than the U.S., but there is a marginalized group of people. I mean, it would be similar to the African American or Hispanic in the U.S. So I was working with those kind of kids to kind of like give them some opportunity, other than just like let's do some drugs and participate in the prison industrial complex. Unfortunately, we have the largest incarcerated on the planet. In America. And anyways, long story short, basically I was working on that stuff, and I was like, I'm going to start an indie game company because because I have always wanted to do it. There's some other jobs I was doing at the time that were really stressing me out, and oh man, this is a really long story. But anyway, I started the indie game company, and I was like, I did a Deus Ex mod and I couldn't sell it, and I said, I really want to make games, but I had a wife and I have 2 kids, and another fun story. Never marry as a game developer. Never, make sure you marry somebody who's really nice and Canadian, because anyone else would divorce you if they said, I'm going to quit half of my jobs and go make games now. So that was really nice. I basically took a year and a half off, and I worked on Near Feud because I said I wanted to make a commercial game so that I could try to do this as a living. And just give it a shot, give it a real shot, because I hadn't really. I worked for this mobile game company. I taught game design, but never really tried to do a game company. So that was Silver Spook Games. That was Near Feud. I took 2 years off, and I took a year and a half off. I was still working. I was still teaching these kids, but I quit another job that I had that was really hard, and worked on Near Feud, and got it done. And I'd never done adventure. This is my first adventure game. I'd never actually done a point and click. But I came from like Deus Ex modification. And I was a programmer and et cetera on that, and it's a magnitude simpler to program AGS. So that wasn't a big problem. The hardest thing was the art, because I had to really work on that. So I studied art. I tried to go to art museums. I was gonna hire an artist, but I was like, I don't have any money, and I've worked with people on mods where they just flake out. When you do volunteer things, people a lot of times, you get halfway through and then the artist is like, oh, I just got a job at EA. Bye.
I know what you mean. I flake it on my own projects.
Yeah, and so I was like, you know what? Chris, you're gonna, if you want to get this thing done, I met many people who were like, oh shit, I got 90% of the programming on this project. The artist quit, and I was like, that's not gonna happen. I'm gonna try to learn how to do this other thing. I've been game developing. I've been making music. I've been doing programming and writing, etc. for 20 years. So I'm like, let's get all the skills, and then let's just do it, because if you don't do it, it's never gonna happen, and then you're gonna be 60 years old, you know, programming high frequency trading algorithms for Goldman Sachs, going, hush, I wonder what would have happened if I had tried making a game. My life is kind of shitty right now, and I don't know, I don't feel too good about myself, but, you know, maybe if I try, but it's too late, you know, so I'm like, my dad is like 60 years old, and he never tried what he really wanted to do, and he just complains every time I ever see him about that, so I'm like, you know, let's just give it a try. If you know, if Neophyte fails, it fails. If it succeeds, and then, you know, then I can go teach and do whatever else I want. But, you know, that was kind of the Neophyte thing. I was not, to be honest, I was not the biggest point and click adventure fan beforehand. But I definitely before Primordia and Technobabylon, I should say. But now I'm definitely like I want to make. I'm working on another point and click. But I'm also looking to the future. Like, you know, again, if these things succeed, then I wanna work on something bigger, possibly more like something more on the level of Deus Ex again, yeah. But that's basically how it came to be. This is one interesting story. You know, I wouldn't say I was not home. I would say a lot of inspiration came from the kids that I work with. Because I was working with a lot of kids who were, again, this is inner city pop. You know, this is what I meant by this is the dystopic side of the reality that gets hidden. Is I was working with kids in Hawaii. Hawaii actually has the highest level of homelessness in the country. Hawaii has like one of the highest inequality. It's the island I'm from is the hardest to survive in terms of even like New York or San Francisco, the cost of living is equivalent, but the average pay for like a chef is 25% less. So it's just a really tough place, and a lot of the stuff was inspired by that. And like the kids I was working with, I would say the kids I was teaching, 30% of them were actually homeless. Their parents were homeless or incarcerated. A lot of them were incarcerated. A lot of kids they actually had drug problems. They were like, the character in Neophyte, Proto J, he's basically a gangbanging bot. You know, he's like a, you know, he's kind of like a little, you know, he's like an Ice Cube, you know, kind of punk ass kid. That is modeled off of my experiences working with kids just like that. They talk almost exactly like that in this kind of like non-specific LA, Ebonics slang mashed up with all kind of different slang they've heard from all over the place. A lot of them are immigrants, and you know, and that part of Neophyte, that the underbelly, like the sprawl, the dirty cyberpunk feature, is modeled like very much on my experiences working with those kids. And, you know, like if you're homeless, like if you're sleeping in a box and police are like, police would actually like, you know, beat them to get them off of the street. You're in front of our hotel. This is the Hilton. Get away from our hotel. And they like, you know, they get beaten. They go to homeless shelters, and some of them were assaulted in homeless shelters. And, you know, or I've had students who were actually raped in homeless shelters. It was just horrible, right? And you know, they had opinions, right, about the society in which they lived, right, which was like, you know what, you know, screw you. You're telling me to go to school. You're telling me to stay. You know, you're telling me to get off of the street. Blah blah blah. Well, you know, it was basically middle finger, and I was the guy who was in there going, no, you should really believe in the system. You should really go try to get a job, kids. You know, and it's like, and they would, you know, they'd be like, I was a stand-in for the you know, the faceless state or whatever, you know, the enemy, right, of civilization. And it was like, you know, and so that's a lot of like when you see the main character interacting with the robot kid, the Carl Carbon and Protege, it's that is me and my kids, my students, a lot of the time. And they gave me a lot of gray hairs, but and again, that's where Neophyte came from. And you know, living in Hawaii, where we have the highest concentration of billionaires on the planet, apparently, in the place that on the main island. And so I work for a lot of really wealthy people. Like I work for like multiple millionaires. One of them was a billionaire. And right across the street, there's this kid living in a cardboard box, right? And that's the impetus. That was the like the soul of Neophyte, was that trying to express it. You know, trying to express that in a game. And again, this is a personal experience. I wouldn't say that like. There's nobody who really, I mean, I wouldn't expect anybody to make, you know, I wouldn't say cyberpunk has to be like that, or I don't like games that aren't necessarily dystopian, but that is the thing, that is my experience, that is the thing, and I wanted to kind of communicate something personal in the game, and, you know, it's just, you know, basically it's a lot to say that, you know, that I feel that the thing that indie games can do, that a AAA studio necessarily will have a hard time with, is trying to tell a personal story and try to have not necessarily to. I try not to be ham-fisted. I know sometimes it comes off as this is a message that you're gonna get, but it is. I wanted it to have a unique take on how things are and a reflection of what the future might look like and how things actually are now in the game. And yeah, so anyway, I could go on for a long time, but that's Near Feud in a nutshell. Yeah. Anyways, mic drop. Yeah, sorry. But yeah, but yeah, I would never have made. Let me say this: I would never have made Near Feud if it wasn't for Primordia and Technobabylon. They were huge inspirations for me. Just in terms of what is possible. I was ready to give up on games. I will say this: I was ready to just give up on gaming, generally speaking, and just I'll watch movies and read books. Because I had not played a lot. I had not played a lot like Deus Ex or the games that like had something on that level. And then I played. First one was Primordia, and then Technobabylon, and then I was like, no, it is possible to do something. It is possible to do something of this quality, of the quality of story, of the quality of characters, of the quality of even the art and everything else, with like 1 or 2 or 3 guys or girls, and that was a huge inspiration for me. So when I'm rambling a lot, most of the time I'm just kind of flipping out because I'm like talking to one of my I'm gonna make your head really big right now. I'm talking to one of my favorite developers of all time. So there you go. So everybody blame James Dearden for Near Feud.
As things to be blamed for go, I think I can live with that.
Yeah, I'm glad that you got a chance to play it. Well, I don't want to talk about that, but yeah, I mean, it's a thing. I would love to do more, and I hope this is. I will say this. I say this a lot, but I want the man. I'm such an asshole, but I want the world to be filled with more games that are like, not indie games generally speaking, but I want to have more games like this out there. Selfishly, partially, because these are the kind of games I like to play, and maybe I'm just a snob, but I like personal games. I like games that have a rich story, games that have real characters, games that are relevant to the time in which they're written, that are relevant to reality, that are not just not let's say the trans, not just the trans in the sense like it's there to just distract people. I would like games to be more of a positive cultural force on average. Now again, not every game has to be like changing the world, right? But I would like there to be more, because I believe this is another thing I'm looking at is that more people are playing more games than reading books. More people are playing games than even watching movies. More people are playing and watching other people play games. PewDiePie, right? $60 million. 1 year, people are doing more things involving games than almost anything else in human culture. It seems to me that's where it's going, and I would hate it that it's just military industrial complex propaganda and Flappy Birds and toxic culture, right? That I see a lot. I seen this, and even on Steam, I'm like, what the hell is this? People are, what happened to civility? And it's just like, oh, I hate you. I hate you. No, I hate you. I hate your game. No, I hate your. That's what I'm seeing. I would hate it to just be that. I want more. It's the same one that we want more civil, intelligent, relevant discourse in our text and voice communication. We want more. I want more of that in games, and that's really pretentious to say that. Technobabylon and Near Feud, we do that, and everyone else doesn't. But just generally, that's what. If I had $1 million, if I had $200 million, I joke, but I would start 1,000 indie studios. That's what I would do. I would not buy. I already live in Hawaii, so I can't retire to Hawaii. I would not buy a Porsche and a mansion. I don't give a shit. We were actually homeless for a little while I was making Near Feud. I was living on a beach for a little bit. We were all living on a beach. That's a little bit pumped up, but we were actually living. We moved to the Big Island to get out of the big city, and the Big Island is more like a country. And it's like, what do you need? You don't need fancy flying. Well, I would love to have a flying car. I don't need a flying car. I don't need a Mercedes. I don't need a mansion. I don't need any of that. All I need is this computer and this, and we have food. We have somewhere to sleep, and that's enough. For us to be happy. I was like, what happens if Neofeud makes $200,000? What are we gonna buy? Me and my wife, we tried to make a list, and it's like, there's not a lot. There's not a lot. I mean, there's some things that would be cool. I would love to go to UK. That's one thing. I'm gonna be seeing you soon. So everybody buy Neofeud so I can go visit James. But other than that, it's like there's not a whole lot. And but one thing I would like is I would invest it in more indie games, or books, or people trying to write something. People trying to make something, because I think that's the only thing. That's really the thing that I think would help. Apart from like climate change and political crisis. We don't have a lot of good drinking water in cities in America. I don't know if you heard about this. But apart from like environmental and like immediate stuff like homeless people, our homeless problem and poverty, inequality. That's the only thing I can really think of is to. And part of that's I think part of the solution is the culture has to evolve a little bit. Oh man, I'm sounding like such a fucking snob right now. But anyways, you know what I'm trying to say. I think you know what I'm trying to say.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know if you watch any of my streams, but sometimes I go on these little ranty things. It's my dad is a professional theologian, and he's Catholic. So I give these. I joke. I kind of give these homilies because my dad is. He's a very strong-minded liberal guy. Anyways, yeah. I don't know where I'm going with any of this, but yeah. I mean, anything else? Oh, let me ask you a little about yourself. I don't know what is. I heard you taught English, correct? In
yeah.
How was that?
It was good. I spent a year out in South Korea and part of this summer in Bournemouth teaching again as well. I go back to Bournemouth every so often to teach because I like teaching occasionally. It's a good classroom topic. I tell the kids in the morning I teach English and in the afternoon I make computer games. It's it's a good way of engaging with them a bit. I came to computer games from a very non-technical background. Humanity is politics as a subject. Cause for me, it's a way of telling stories, and programming in games is just kind of the medium for it. And in a sense, politics is like one huge story. Granted, it can kill a lot of people. It's the story that kills people, depending how it goes. But when people get interested in it, they get interested in it for the same reasons as they do dramatic narrative, that and the life-altering consequences it can have. Yeah.
I don't know. I haven't been to a lot of these places like South Korea, etc. I don't want to say what's your favorite place, but I don't know. What was your most interesting experience? Like, I don't know, internationally, teaching, or just I don't know. What is your what was your experience in these different parts of the world?
Well, I grew up in most of these places because my parents were working on internationally. They were diplomats, so
okay.
Born in Kenya and then raised in Italy, Malta, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Brazil, the UK occasionally, all over the place.
Oh wow! Okay, so you were in the US. We don't really have if war is diplomacy by other means. The US, we don't really have diplomats. We have army brats because mostly we go over and invade people. So, but I mean, like, yeah, and I have friends who like lived everywhere because their parents were in the army. So that sounds like
similar kind of deal to that. I went to school with quite a few of them because sometimes, depending where you were, either the US Army people would send their kids to the American school or to the international school. So the ones for the internationals, they went to the same place as I did. So yeah, I knew a lot of US Army brats when growing up.
Oh wow, yeah. That actually makes a lot of more sense. That makes sense, but that kind of makes sense that Technobabylon, the way that I mean, you did a really great job of portraying an international city and all these different cultures very well. But it makes a lot of sense because you've been in all these different cultures for a lot of your life. It seems like.
Exactly, and part of it was also I was looking forward to the day when somebody would accuse me of cultural appropriation for making use of a character from X location. When I could point out to them, well, I did used to live there for 3 years, or I married. I think it was last year. Somebody on Twitter stated that the guy who made Technobabylon should have consulted an actual Asian person about characters like that. Yeah, I'm married to a Sri Lankan. There's a whole family.
Yeah, there you go. This is great. Not great, but this is what I agree. Like, I'm actually, in Hawaii, I'm actually part of everything except for I don't have any relatives in Antarctica. I'm actually part Japanese, many German, English, Scottish, Portuguese, Spanish, Native Hawaiian, Native American, and I'm not related to penguins, but that's about it. So it's another good thing. So when somebody accuses me like, oh, I don't like the way you portrayed this or portrayed that, and it's like, well, you know what? That's all up in there somewhere along the way. I have it's somewhere. You can look at my birth certificate, sucker. Like, it's like, yeah. But it is interesting that the cultural appropriation angle. I have heard that from a couple people. Somebody said like, why are you making this game that you're talking about the minorities, etc. I don't think that maybe you should let
can't
maybe that's not how
their perspective.
Yeah, maybe that's not how they actually feel. Like, you shouldn't put words in their mouth. Or somebody said like, oh, is this gonna be like another one of those fantasy games where it's like the orcs are standing for African American slaves? Like, I don't think you should do that because it was somebody with like a doctorate in, I don't know, somebody with like maybe not, they're studying. I think a lot of people who make those accusations a lot of times, not all of them, but sometimes when it's kind of like, what are you talking? That's I don't know if you really have any there. Usually it's somebody who doesn't have those experiences, but is kind of like wants to or studies it, and they're not. But I think I'll say this: everybody who was a person of color who's not white or from an actual marginalized person, they've all like loved it, and I think everyone I spoke to loved Neofeud, and they've also loved Technobabylon, and I feel like a lot of times it's a little bit of the a zealotry. They're looking for something, and they're looking for something to come after. Have you had any like what was you said, have you had any like big like reactions, or I don't want to say like, I guess Why Jedi would help you out with, but have you had any like big PR issues with Technobabylon?
Not really. No, it's been mostly positive. It's just the occasional complainer, and that sort of, fortunately, everyone can see that if anybody who's played the game notices that the whoever's complaining is coming at it from a position of a completely nonsensical position when it comes to those sorts of issues. Or we made sure to at least have either consulted or researched on the issues we don't have personal experience of. But the one bit, there's a character in the fifth part of the game who's got Broca's aphasia. He's talking gibberish and can't understand what the player's saying. And they were saying, this is insensitive. It's what I get. I'm epileptic, and it's how I know I'm about to have a seizure. I can't understand a word anyone's saying. And for about 20 minutes afterwards, English is just complete nonsense.
Oh wow! I didn't realize that. That was one of my. That was a really fun character. The what is it called? When they I can't remember the technical term for when they inject diseases into themselves.
The fad.
What is it called?
Yeah. That's a good question. I should know this.
That's right. I forget a lot of things about my games too. But yeah, I mean that character was. Really interesting. That's one thing. That's this again. Another thing. The detail in all the characters, the detail in the world, the things that don't show up in games, like generally speaking, like aphasia, like the shoot, I can't even think of the things I'm thinking of right now, but just the unique characters, the diversity that is like not only just like diverse, and it's not like a lot of games just, hey, do we have like, here's a rubric, like checkbox of all the, do we have a yellow and a brown and a white, do we have a trans, do we have a a gay, okay, good, we've got all those things, okay, ship it, like it's not like Technobabylon is like much more like realistic, much more.
I wanted to make people first, and the other features of them are descriptives rather than what makes them who they are as characters. I kind of wanted. I mean, lately I say Gene Roddenberry's not an original hack, but he did have some good ideas when it came to things like representation in early Star Trek, and that's the kind of approach I wanted to go for with it. These are people in this environment, and all other concerns are secondary.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, it's not like, oh, look, it's something person, or look at how my wife is all, she's very she's autistic, and she has feelings about the way in which strong feelings about the way in which they're portrayed in a lot of recent shows. I don't want to name names, but it's like a lot of times it's caricature, because the show is trying to look at this,
isn't this funny?
Yeah, haha, look how funny this autistic person, look how autistic they are, look how weird they are, look how something they are, right? And it's like, that's the whole, like, it's like, that's like, it's a one-trick pony kind of thing. Look at this show, look how funny that is, and it's like, and yeah, she's definitely like, I really upset about that kind of stuff, and, but yeah, whereas in Technobabylon, she doesn't play many adventure games, but I was like, it's the kind of thing that, again, this is like, to go back to like elevating culture, not necessarily elevating, just having a better discourse, like that is like something I never even seen that kind of thing in any game. And in Technobabylon, it's like, it's just like, you treat all of the different the diversity is treated in such a mature way, like even in TV shows, sometimes even in books. I haven't really come across that, and I'm sure like part of that has to do with I mean, English major, so you're really good at describing these things, and also the international upbringing. I think it definitely shows. I feel,
politics major,
and politics major. One thing I feel like I don't want to spoil or anything, but one thing I had this idea that one thing that like might help, and a good thing that could help, generally speaking, with cultural and what you call misunderstandings and toxicity. Generally speaking, is if people were required, not again, this sounds like a really bad big government solution, but if people were required to do something like what you did, travel, live in other situations, like live in India, live in like with the big, what is the big hot topic, right? Oh, all these refugees, I don't know, even in Hawaii, in America, all these refugees, all these immigrants coming from those other places, we need to send them back there, right? And it's like, well, if everybody was required to go live in a place that doesn't have your average, per capita income, and be there without and experience actually what that life is like, I feel like that would be one thing that would be, I don't know how you would do that. In Neofeud, I don't know if you played, have you beaten Neofeud?
Not quite to the end yet, no.
Okay, I won't spoil it for you, but I will say that's one. I'm sure. Have you met the princess character?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, she has some ideas about, basically saying that like that requiring people to actually interact with, or maybe not necessarily live in their shoes, but to experience other ways of being. It's kind of like the only, in some ways in America, I feel like it's the only way really that people can talk. I mean, because a lot of times that's what it is, right? Is people just talking at each other, right? I mean, in politics, I mean, I don't know how your politics is, but over here it's just people, they're already set in their ways. In like logic, in philosophy, it would be like their axioms are set, and anything the other side says is never. It's like, yeah, it's all a lie, right? It's all like, it's just fake news, it's fake data, it's fake this, everything you say is garbage, and I'm just here to get my rage fix today, and I'm gonna yell at you on the internet or on wherever you're yelling, and so I think so. Anyways, I don't want to go back to, but basically the point is that so the diplomacy, studying, just having other experiences is kind of the key way. That's the only time I've ever seen anyone change their views is when they had to live somewhere else. Like they were from white, somewhat the red South, and then they had to live somewhere else. Maybe they were the military. That's they actually a lot of the veterans that I know are actually anti-war because they've had to go see what it's actually like over there. Whereas people from America, not people. Pre-war military soldiers they're very different, And then in Hawaii, there's a lot of the hippies, like the Vietnam War vets. A lot of the hippie Terminator character in Near Future is based on actual hippie vets that have like PTSD. They lost their mind, but they kind of holding it together because they listen to Jimi Hendrix, and it's totally gnarly, dude. I'm just surfing in Hendrix, but I have nightmare flashbacks all the time, like every night. every time there's firecrackers, because in Hawaii we got a lot of Chinese New Year, the firecrackers they just hear a machine gun and they hide under their bed, fire, and they like go back to the war, and so it's like, but it's they're only when they went to war they were like, we're gonna kick those Viet Cong's ass, right? We're gonna kick some ass, and then they come back and it's like, what? Peace and love, dude.
I've seen things, man. I've seen things.
Yeah, I've seen things you people wouldn't believe. But exactly, to bring it back to later, is Technobabylon on sale somewhere? So everybody can go buy it? No.
It's still on Steam and still on GOG, but I think this week it's a sale on Shardlight rather than Technobabylon. But
okay.
Dave's trick is to have a sale almost every month. So.
Yeah, he's got this thing nailed down. He's a smart guy.
He's got the timing. I think he's got so many games he can have something on sale, so he's able to get a sudden rush on something every month. But for those of us who've only got one or two games of that with him, then every couple of months we suddenly get a surge of sales. But I get which I guess is a sign that I better make some more games for Wajitai.
Yeah, you gotta keep them happy. Absolutely. I to be honest, I'm trying not to. I'm supposed to be live streaming right now, but I'm like I'm fangirling out. So, anyways, but I will say that I hope everybody, to kind of bring it to a close. Blade Runner 2049. Everybody go see Blade Runner 2049. Spend the rest of your money on Shardlight, and any money you have left over, buy some more copies of Technobabylon.
And get it on iPhone as well.
And get it on iPhone. Have it on all your devices. Have it on VHS and Commodore 64.
That's the great thing about AGS. The minimum requirement is Pentium.
You can run it on a microwave, can't you?
Basically, yes.
I'm getting Technobabylon for my microwave today. That's what I'm doing today. That's today's mission. Let's see. Yeah. Anyway, it's been a super awesome time. This is already my favorite podcast of all time. I haven't done a lot of them, but
not to a sample to draw from.
Yeah, I've got about like 6. So congratulations, sir. I will say this. I mean, I definitely I feel like we could talk for long periods of time, and I don't want to take up too much more of yours, but definitely. This is what I was looking for when I wanted to make a Silver Spook, that whole Silver Spook podcast thing, is talk to people who are doing not necessarily cyberpunk, but things in the science fiction and that area, games, books, etc. Anybody else who's listening to this, consider hitting me up. This is kind of what I wanted to get to. So I am incredibly grateful to you, not just for coming on this podcast, James Dearden, creator of Technobabylon.
Thank you for having me.
For making Technobabylon. I want Technobabylon 2. I'm going to pre-order it the nanosecond it becomes available. And I hope maybe one day we'll talk again at some point, maybe when you're further along. Yeah, that's all I got.
Sounds like fun.
All right, sir. Where can we find you? Anything else you want to say?
Follow me on Twitter if you're not already doing so.
All right, follow him on Twitter. And this is Silver Spook. This is Silver Spook Games. You can just Google Silver Spook or Neo Feud, and I'm pretty sure most of you know where I am. Silver Spook Games. All right. Thanks so much for listening. And tune in next time. I'm really bad at coming up with these sign out things. I'm really bad at podcasting, generally speaking, but